Hello and welcome back everyone. In this video I'm going to talk about elements. Element is a topic which is common for both React Native and React. So this is a general presentation and this video is going to give you a very general idea of what are elements in these. Hello and welcome back everyone. In this video we're going to talk about the main elements of React Native. We're going to understand every element that we have. We're going to also understand why we use React Native for our app development. And we're going to have an overlook and overall idea why we use React Native in general. Okay. So let's start with the basic idea of what React Native. So React Native is React, okay, is like React, but it uses components instead of web components as building blocks so that it understands the basic structure of React Native. You need to understand some of the basic components like JSX, components, state, and props. Okay. So the main idea over here is that React Native is very similar to React. Don't worry if you have not interacted with React till now. Okay. The main idea of using React Native is that it uses something known as components. Okay. Now, the way React Native works or any app development environment works is that you create a component and you reuse it again and again. I'll give you a very simple example. If you have ever scrolled through Zomato, you would have seen that the blocks of Zomato look exactly the same. One of the reasons is because they create a component and they reuse it again and again. And the more you reuse it, the more you have the component in your framework. Now, why we use these components? There are multiple reasons for that. First of all, it makes the app very light, because if you know that similar components are going to be used, you can write the component just once and repeat it as many times as you want. So that's one. Another thing is it is very standardized. Okay, the components that you write in React Native are universally acceptable in both iOS and Android. Okay, the way React Native works is that you write a component once and it goes to both the platforms, Android and iOS altogether. So you have a very coherent design language, you have a very structured source code, and you also have the flexibility to increase or deploy the source code simultaneously at the same time. Because if you're developing Android and iOS apps differently, you would have a chance that you are doing one development faster than the other, and chances are that you won't be able to submit both of the codes at the same time. So it's always a good idea to use React Native and have the app built on that instead of having individual app development environment. Okay, so that's number one. Okay, now another thing that we're going to focus upon is JSX components. Okay, so JSX is nothing but JSX is basically a fusion of JavaScript and HTML. When you combine both of these elements together, you basically get JSX. And the reason why we use JSX is because JSX is a very simplified and a structured format of making components and deploying these components in the environment. That's why we use JSX. Okay, now we also have states and props. Okay, this is going to be very interesting and important. Props is nothing but properties. Okay, so if you are telling that the edges are going to be smooth, or if you're telling that borders are going to be thicker, these are all the properties that you use in the app. And states are basically used for whenever you have a state of functionality. Like if I give you a very simple example, if I press this button on my watch, it takes me to the home. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm basically pressing a button and that is taking to me to a different state. Okay, so multiple states means that you have the flexibility of using and having different states in the functionality. So one is one state, which is the home state, then you jump to like a sub screen, that is going to be another state. So you have all these states which help you to connect the app in a much more intuitive and easier way. Okay, so let's learn with the basics. Okay, so hello world would be the basic thing that we're going to use. Okay, and we're going to deploy our application as well, but first of all, let's understand things. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is we'll try to render hello world. Don't worry, we are just going to understand these things now. Okay, and then move further in the next upcoming videos with the app development as well. Okay, so here I have a JSX component block. Okay, the most important idea and the most important thing that you should know is how it is written. Okay, so if you see the structure, okay, you basically have the import libraries, like what all imports you are doing over here on the top. That's always in every programming language. That's a very important thumb of rule, that you do all the importing in start, so that your program, if it needs anything, it will automatically pull it from there. So you do all the importing, then you basically create a small component. Okay, that's basically an arrow function. If you have worked with Java, this is known as an arrow function because there is an arrow over here, and that arrow function is having the properties as well, which is the props that I was talking about, and then we have the text, which is hello world. Okay, so what are the properties am I applying? Okay, so I'm applying that justification is going to be center, alignment is going to be center, and then I have the text which is going to be displayed hello world. And finally, in every component you have to export something. Okay, and that export name is going to be the one one, and it's going to be the name that is going to be, it's called as. Like my name is Aman, okay? So if someone is calling me, they would call Aman instead of something else. So how do you call a component is defined over here, hello world app, okay? So simple declaration and simplified structure allows you to have these understanding and have these components layered one by one, and these things help you to develop a sense of understanding in the entire ecosystem, and that's why it is brilliant. Okay, let's move ahead. Let's learn the basics again. Okay, first we're going to do, we need to import the React. Okay, so that's the first thing that we do. Okay, we import the React component JSX, and then we use and convert all these things. Then we import the text and the components. Again, then we find hello world function, which I just told you that we declare a function, which and then finally we basically export that function with a name. Okay. Now, okay, this is the same thing. Now, basically, over here we basically have the same understanding that what exactly happens in the background. Okay, so it uses something known as ES6. Okay, so it was essentially launched in 2015. Right now, what we're using in 2022 is known as ES7. Okay, that's the latest one. It's a set of improvement to JavaScript, now part of the official standards, but not yet supported by all browsers. Okay, so that's a very big problem. All these React Native applications usually have a standard which is ES7. This is ES7, which has a lot more software compatibility with a lot of browsers, but still, like browsers like Safari and Edge sometimes give up. So it's not really a good idea to use those. If you have browser like Chrome or Firefox, they are much more supportive. There is a reason for that. Why? Because they are essentially based on the Java as the main core development, and they support all the latest libraries and functions. So that's something which is very important. Okay, so this is just the text of how it is. Okay, what we're using. Let's understand the components that we use. Okay, so the components, we basically understood the component structure. Okay, so the component that we declared, hello world app, okay, that was just for the hello world declaration, and what we see on the screen is something that is declared on this component. If you don't use the components, or if you don't have the components, chances are that you are not actually implying or using what is required to develop that sense of understanding. Okay, it's very important that your components are defined properly. It needs to have a very defined structure, otherwise they won't be even visible to your output. So that's what I'm actually doing over here. Now let's talk about props. Okay, props in general and properly. Okay, so most components can be customized when they're created. Okay, with different parameters. These creation parameters are called props. Props is nothing but properties. Okay, so simplified, in a very simple language, you call props as properties. And props are basically used to add features. Okay, I'll give you a very simple example. The shadow that you see over here is a props, okay, or a property that we have added while making this presentation. Okay, even this box is having the colors, which is again a property. Okay, so all the software uses some sort of color property indentation, and that basically adds all the colors to the images. So or to the text that you write. Okay, so all these small things basically add a lot of functionality and add a lot of responsibility about how the system is looking and how the system is going to behave, and that's something that makes the entire system much more mature and much more bearable for human eyes. Okay, let's move ahead. So using names as props to customize the greeting letters, you use JSX. Okay, JSX basically is JavaScript, JavaScript version which is going to be used for our React Native, and that's what is important. Let's talk something about states. Okay, let's talk about states. Unlike props, they are read only and should not be modified. The state allows the React component to change their output over time in response to the user action, network responses, or anything else. So I'll give you a very simple example. When you tap on some block, okay, and it changes the color of that, okay, that's basically a state. Okay, you basically define what state is going to behave like what, and how these states are going to change when the user is going to interact. And all these things which you have, and all these functions that you have, can be changed and customized depending on what user is doing. Okay, so if the user is doing multiple things, chances that you can define all these things, and you can have all these things all together in one single system. And that's something which is incredible. Why? Because it allows the user to have the amount of flexibility that is going to make these changes happen. Okay, so that's it. Okay, so let's move on. What is the difference between React and React Native to handle states? Okay, so React and React Native, both are two different things. Don't mix them up. Okay, first we'll look into React.js, counter example using hooks. So this is a little advanced, advanced example, but where we use hooks as well. Okay, but the main idea is we're going to see how it is different. Okay, So we basically have this structure of React.js, okay, React JavaScript, okay, not React Native. React Native is the one that we're working with, okay. And what we're doing is we basically have a set counter, user state is equal to 0, and then we have the declaration and everything, and that's how we actually do it. Now we are going to look at a React counter using hooks of React Native, and you see a little small change over here where you see this text and the button. You basically define the state over here only, okay, and that basically justifies the styles. So if you see the styles sheet over here, and if I go back to this one, you basically have the CSS container, which is actually doing this thing. But for us, it's like you have to declare a button, which then with the non-click, and then the counter is going to increase. Okay, but if you see over here, what you're doing is you're basically declaring the button. Okay, and that button is not first of all, you see that the button is not having any sort of closing and opening. It's just like a button, and it just increase that value, and you have the properties written like this. Okay, so that's the main thing that we have. Now, the conclusion that there's no difference in handling the states, but in React and you can use the state of your component in both the classes and functions. The only difference that you see would be a little bit of syntax. Okay, some of the properties don't really work the same way as they are in the React Native and React. But the main important property is that if you write something in React Native, chances are that you can modify it slightly and you can run it on React as well. Okay, this modification is something which is important because sometimes what happens, you are not you cannot really directly use this features like Bootstrap. People use Bootstrap for React Native, although it is made for React, with this small sort of modification in the syntaxes, and it saves a lot of time and adds all the features. So things like these helps to make these very, very powerful. Upcoming next, we are going to run Expo Go on the phone. Okay, so please keep your phone ready. Okay, you can use a physical phone or a simulator, but I will use both. Okay, so I'm going to tell you how these things work, and we're going to install Expo Go, and we're going to download the latest boilerplate that I made from my GitHub repository, and we're going to test all these things in the next one. So hope you enjoyed this one, and I'll see you all in the next one. Till then, happy learning and peace.